Welcome to Some Joyful Noises, a music podcast with no rhyme, rhythm, or reason. This show is a proud member of the Anazal Podcast Network. The reason we do this show is for community, not because any of us are music experts, but rather because we believe that music helps shape community, and that's something that's really important to all of us at the Anazal Podcast Network. I'm Joshua Knoll. I am the producer of this show. I say producer and not host because this show has no host. It has no schedule. It has no format. You are just as much the host as I am. If you would like to find out how you could lead your own episode of Some Joyful Noises, then listen to the end of the show for an invitation to lead your own conversation on this podcast. We hope you enjoy this show with no rhyme, no rhythm, and no reason. This is the launch week for our podcast, Some Joyful Noises. The two most important things for a successful podcast is one, reliability and consistency. And then number two is the best first foot forward that you can put. Since this show has no plan and no schedule, we're going to drop the ball on consistency. That means it's extra important that we have a good first foot forward, and we're asking for your help. There's a few things you can do that'll take less than 5 minutes and cost you absolutely nothing that can help our show put our first foot forward. So here's 5 things that will take you less than 5 minutes to do for no cost that would help us. Number 1, share the show. Find a friend, share the show with someone. Number 2, rate and review our show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Number 3, go to podchaser.com and rate and review the show there. Number 4, join our Facebook group, Some Joyful Noises. And then, of course, number 5 is just enjoy the show. Be sure to subscribe, and if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can go to the menu of our podcast to select automatic download. That'll help increase our downloads and tell the algorithms that this show's really important. All of these are also going to be down below in the description in case you forget any. Thank you all again so much, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, friends. Welcome to an episode of Some Joyful Noises. This is a podcast where there is no rhyme, no reason, and or rhythm. So this is from the Anazal Podcast Network, and there's a lot of podcasts in this network, a lot of fun ones. A couple of them I'm a part of, but here's a brand new one, Some Joyful Noises, where we just geek out on music and talk about music and our theories of music and what we resonate with in music, and whether it's faith-based or whether it's secular, or, I don't think there's a difference between the two, a whole lot. It's just songs and tunes that recognize a feeling and pain within me, as the one favorite song that I like talks about. But anyway, here we are, and I'm with one of my good friends, Tripp, and we've experienced music live together a number of times, and we're going to talk about some concerts that we've been to, and maybe go a little deeper and philosophize around what is it about communal singing that's so special, whether it's in worship or at concerts, and why we resonate with that. And then talk about some of our favorite concerts we've been to, maybe apart from each other, or bands we're geeking out on now. So that's what's in store for you today, all under perhaps 50 minutes. We'll see. We'll see if that happens or not. Tripp, how are you doing? What's going on in your world today? And then, is there a band or particular song that you have on your playlist right now? I think it could be the soundtrack of Rings of Power, but if there are other bands and soundtracks and things that you have on a loop in your earbuds these days?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good, I think. The month before Theology Beer Camp is just crazy.
Yeah.
And all the planning, and that's what I'm currently doing between all the production stuff of the audio documentary on Bonhoeffer that we've been working on. So,
yeah,
this is the busiest month after Theology Beer Camp.
Come November,
Yeah.
Let's go to a concert. Maybe Black Rose. We'll see. We got some tickets.
I currently this week, I was in the Kickstarter, so I got a CD in advance, but only so many places you can play CDs. But Carbon Leaf's new album just came out.
Okay.
Time is a Playground, and it's wonderful. I mean, it would be hard for me not to like New Carbon Leaf Music as a member of their 0.001% club on Spotify. But there's new songs to listen to. Like I've listened to it twice today while working. You got to listen to it enough that then I know it all, so that regardless of what happens in concert, like I'm ready to go. Like you want to go deep cuts or all the way to the present. I gotta be a full participant in every song on the set list when I see them live. So, just enjoying it. And this is their first like rock album in a while. The last two were more like traditional. They're like traditional Scottish folk style stuff. So it's exciting.
Just in those few sentences, you sparked something within me to think about. Like in terms of concerts and bands that we love, there's the hits, the greatest hits, and then they have their deep cuts, and then they have their new stuff that they really want people to like. They'll play in their concerts. Sometimes people are like, I don't want the new stuff. I want the old stuff. We'll get in that a little bit later once I share Ben Kicking Out. But I think there's some dynamics there in terms of bands that we love and what the songs we like to listen to. Like even riding up with you to Theology Beer Camp last year in Missouri, I know Carbon Leaf was on a loop, and we listened to a lot of Carbon Leaf because as you were getting psyched and ready and getting in your game face on for Theology Beer Camp, those songs are catchy and super fun to listen to, and that was a good soundtrack heading up to Missouri. I'm at a stage now. There's definitely bands I love and will keep turning back to and those kinds of things, but I also have kids in college that I fully respect their suggestions of new songs and bands. Are like, hey Dad, I think we know your style. We think you'd like this. Or they're like, oh, I'm going to go see this concert with my friends. I'm like, oh, well, who's that? I've never heard of them. So I respect their fandom when it comes to music and what they love. And there's this new person that I haven't heard of called Remy Wolf. She's an artist, super cool. Hannah was supposed to go see her in Asheville this weekend, and can't now because of what's happened with the storms in Asheville. But I've listened to some of Remy Wolf's songs, and there's a song called "Cherries and Cream," which is absolutely incredible. I'm a big fan of Beck and Elbow and U2, and if even 90s rap. So I like those kind of rhythm and songs. But man, if you have a good bass line and you can slap a good funk on a song, I'm
slap a good funk.
I can roll with it. So Remy Wolf, check out Remy Wolf, Cherries and Cream, and another song called Sugar. I think she has other songs that don't talk about desserts, but she is pretty amazing. And thank you, Hannah, for that suggestion. And it is now in my algorithm and playlist. So that's what we've been geeking out on when it comes to music. Tripp, help me before we get into the concerts we've been to together. Let's think through a little bit. What makes communal singing so special? And we do it in worship, do it in church. There's something about the Disney musical, the Broadway play, what we do in worship of singing together, but there's only so far that our words can go to articulate the feelings or experiences that we have. So they have to bust out in poetry or music or bust out in song. So there's something about that. But what is it about communal singing? You've been a part of a band, you play guitar. I don't play instruments, but you do. And even at Theology Beer Camp, there's deep conversations around theological and philosophical ideas and experiences, but also you have karaoke. You also have people who come and play a concert for us. What is it about communal singing and the concerts that make them so special in the human experience?
Well, yeah, I think that one of the fascinating things about communal singing and music in general is that Homo sapiens were doing music and dance and stuff together before we cultivated language that could do much. That there's this power in music, dance, rhythm that ends up in inviting everyone who's present to make porous that boundary between ourselves and each other. That kind of experience is something that a lot of philosophers have pointed out, that the places that kind of resonance between other people can take place is increasingly small in a modern world. And think of it's a potential in nature, but how much of our lives is nature not a resource, or the environments that we're in clouded or created by human beings, right? Like we build stuff, we scarred the land to move between it, or we harness it to grow food, or there's light and noise pollution. But yet we all know that experience that nature can like bring this type of resonance where we feel porous and are encountering something that's deep beyond just what it is that seizes us. Music is one of those places that's like primordially human to connect in it. And so live music, be it community singing in worship, slightly intoxicated karaoke at Theology Beer Camp, going to a concert, those kind of things are something that has brought people together for a long time. And when you go to a concert, especially the ones that you sing along with, the band is in a sense hosting an invitation to move beyond that normal boundary that you have, you kind of like buffer yourself. Charles Taylor's word, we like live in where our selfhood is buffered. Like what gets us to become more porous, to open ourselves up. I think of music, singing, rhythm, these kinds of things as a spiritual technology, and it's one of my favorites. And it's fascinating to me is like, you think of most concerts and communal singing, there's the other kind of concert where it's like one person with a guitar, and the resonance there isn't that we're all singing along. It's that they are going to be so vulnerable. There's like they're cutting themselves open in the song, and they're putting it there. And it's this experience where they like describe something in these deeply intricate, honest, particular ways. And then it resonates with us because in their particularity, the universality of that experience, that emotion, that insight, that challenge, that fear, we recognize it. And I think both of those elements are at play when it goes to music once words are involved. But oftentimes a good what happens in a concert is it's beyond the control of, even when it goes well, of the people playing. In the same way, we've probably both had this experience where someone's completely moved by your sermon, and then when they tell you why, you're like, that's what you heard.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But they're speaking from this place of like feeling heard and known by what just happened. There's this fascinating interview with Bono that I watched where he's talking about what goes on right in a U2 concert, and how he sees it as part of his vocation is inviting people, and he sees himself as a host, right? Not as the lead singer. And I've seen them a number of times. One of my favorite concerts of all time was with Elgin, going to see U2. So the first time I saw him was at the Rose Bowl in Los Angeles.
Cool.
With Alicia, and it was so packed and stuff. She was like that. She's like, I was too uncomfortable, just like this large crowd and stuff. The next time I went was with Elgin when they were in LA. And when he was little, he would dress up like the Edge, like wear a beanie and carry his guitar around and only answer to the Edge. He would say like, Elgin's not here. This is the Edge.
It's cool. They both start with E though. They both start with E. So you're like, okay, so we could do that. We have all the concert DVDs of U2, and we'd watch them, and we'd reenact, and he'd have his toy version of all the, like a microphone, drums, bass, guitar, like this kind of thing, and he'd have us changing characters. And so by the time he got old enough to go to a concert, we go, and I have like a video of us with 100,000 people in Los Angeles singing Elevation together, and in a U2 concert's kind of magical because everyone knows the words, and in Los Angeles it looks like the UN, right? There's every generation, people from because it's such an international country, and U2 is one of the few bands, right, that are still touring, that are a global band, that you have like all of Los Angeles sitting there singing together. And it's just it's a beautiful story. But right, like that one little clip and that one thing, it's all my relationship with U2 and stuff's there, where they're different albums at different moments in time and all that kind of stuff, to then all the joy of just imitating them with your son for fun,
And then there you are sharing this experience. And one of the early times he brought up death to me, and your teenager starts like, I'm going to die. And he's like, what do you do with that? And I'm like, well, I just like to make note to myself, like, there are things, if I get graced with a slow enough death to think, I will think about your face singing Elevation with Bono and 100,000 strangers together. And then I was like, I can't think of something happening where I would not say yes to life again. Because in that moment was all this anticipation of being a dad, all this fun of learning how to be present with your first kid, something dads have a harder time doing, I think, than moms, like learning to join his world and have a deep joy. And we share this love of you too, and all the stories that are there. And then I love live music. And this was his first live concert. And I know you as a dad have this experience, like you love to share live music with your friends and family. But then if it's your kid, you're like, you have an experience where you get to know me. Like there's nothing more Tripp than getting to share my favorite music with someone else who loves it. And it just happens to be my kid. I was like, I would say yes to even a horrible ending because I got to have that with you.
Yeah.
Like, and he's just like, oh yeah, I get, that makes sense. And he's, it makes more sense to him now, as he's gotten older. But to me, that's one of those things that, that little vignette to me describes just what is the possible potential in live music, communal singing, like art done well. And there, look, elder millennials and Gen X, there's hardly, if you are the kind that ends up staying Christian and being the kind you and I are, like everyone knows you too, right? Like, you just assume like if Bono lived in my neighborhood, we'd go to church together. Like, I know this.
Well, there's a fine line between like a church of a couple hundred people singing "Oh for a Thousand Tongues to Sing" and thousands of people singing one together. We're one, but we're not the same. This is kind of hymn about the human condition and a song and poetry around what we all wrestle with together. So a couple things you lift up there, it's not just me resonating with the song, but also part of my nature is I want to belong or be part of a group. Yeah. I want to be part of a community, a communal experience that we're all in this together, whether it's church or a live concert. And then the band or the musician or the artist, whether it's a single person on stage with a guitar or, a 12 piece band like Fish or whatever, then you have a jam band. They're curating an experience and songs for you to be a part of. And sometimes I love it, that part in a concert when the band knows that everybody knows the song, so they kind of drop out and let the whole stadium sing along, and they just get to listen to the people sing back to them. It's just a beautiful experience. I think that's what's going on. That's there in church and worship, but also in these concerts. And it's not just humans. Like as I'm listening to you speak, I'm hearing birds sing behind you. You're sitting outside, so that within nature itself, there's a song and a rhythm, whether it's the sound or rhythm of the crickets, or birds or whale songs underneath the water. There's this vibration and rhythm and song that's a part of all of creation. And again, one of your favorite mythologies, the world of Middle Earth, it was created out of song. That Tolkien.
Is it a mythology though? I mean,
we're in the fourth age. We're in the fourth age. So, right? Aren't we? You and I, the age of men.
I want to know. One of your like going to a concert as a dad.
Yeah.
Stories. I've heard a bunch of them from you, and even like when they're on your calendar, you get pumped like me. This is how I know we should be friends. Is the volume of things where it's like, oh, you both get really nerdy on theology and in like geek culture, and you love live music, and you like a large volume of hops in fermented beverages. Like the number of things we have in common. So I want to hear a Daddy Will live show story.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the first concert we took Hannah and Ella to, but I do know that we, Cindy and I are big Foo Fighter fans, and before the pandemic, the Foo Fighters come to town. Cindy's a huge Dave Grohl and Foo Fighter fan, and we're like, whenever they get nearby, we try to see them. But we took Hannah and Ella to Foo Fighters concert in Greensboro. And maybe it was like the first rock. We've been to a couple concerts, a couple other things, but I'm trying to think. It was definitely before the pandemic. Maybe they were middle school, younger high school. And this experience of the Foo Fighters just coming on stage, and there was so much energy in that stadium that every single song felt like the finale. Like about 3 songs in, I'm like, is this their final song? Because they're playing this like they're going out to this, and every song felt like I was halfway through this concert exhausted, going, all right, we're going to keep going for 2 hours. And the girls were like, admit and confess that they didn't quite understand what was going on. They were like, they just went to a rock concert with their parents. They didn't know what to think. There are a lot of crazy Gen Xers around, who love Nirvana and Foo Fighters, but and it was so loud. But after the fact, they're like, that was fun. We want to keep doing that. So I'm super proud of my kid. Part of the parenting experience is like, I want to curate them a good taste in music, not only just good taste in like life and books and stories and geek culture and church and a healthy spirituality and faith, but also like, I want you to have good taste in music, and I'm gonna help curate that. And maybe there are some that we both enjoy together, or you go off and I'm like, I'm not a big Harry Styles fan, but if you like it, cool, have fun. But the going to those concerts were incredible. So we found places along that we've seen Foo Fighters a number of times together. We've gone to like Jack Johnson together. We've this Wednesday we're going to go see Violent Femmes in Raleigh together, since they don't have school this week because of the storms up in Western North Carolina. So yeah, we'll text each other. This concert's happening in North Carolina, the Southeast. Should we go? Should we get tickets to this? And then our family philosophy around concerts, Cindy's been like, was a huge Prince fan. And then when he died, it was like a death in the family. She was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe her all-time favorite artist is Prince. So when he died, we've seen him a couple times in Florida. In fact, she was pregnant with Ella. She was 8 months pregnant with Ella when we went to see Prince for the second time in Florida. And we feel like that's why Ella has a good rhythm and likes to dance a lot and sing a lot, because she just through the womb she heard the rhythm of Prince and the funkalicious aspect of Prince through the womb. But I forgot where I was going with that. But the philosophy that Cindy has, this philosophy of a living legend. She's like, if there's a living legend getting anywhere near us, whether they're long in the tooth or whatever, we want to make sure we go see them, because we don't know when will be their last concert, or when they'll retire, or when they'll pass away, or they'll take too much fentanyl or whatever. We're like, we want to make sure that we go and see this band. So
maybe the lead singer and guitar player getting in a fight on stage like the week after you see them.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a story. Yeah. All right. We're gonna go on a tangent here. So Cindy and I go see Jane's Addiction. Love and Rockets are opening up. Both bands of our middle school and high school years and early college. And we got to see this band. They're back together. They're notorious for not getting along, but they came together to try to make some more money and go on a reunion tour. And we're jam. We love and Rockets was so good, and perfect. And then we're watching Jane's Addiction. They come out, they sound great. But as soon as Perry Farrell starts talking in the microphone, I look at Cindy and I'm like, oh, he's not well. It's not good. What things you're saying, the words he's slurring, I don't know if he's on something or just like tripped out or what. But I was like, not good. So just don't talk, Perry. Don't talk. Just play music and you'll be okay. Dave Navarro's jamming out his guitar. And as we're leaving the concert, we see that there's like 6 tour buses as we're leaving. And I'm like, you know what those are, Cindy? And she said, well, I said, all the tour, and they made an agreement that if they went on tour with each other, they'll at least have the separate tour buses, that they don't have to be around each other. She's like, yeah, 100%. Well, 2 weeks later, they get in a fight on stage and cancel the tour because guess what? They don't get along with each other. Well, part of the story was that Perry Farrell was starting to talk on stage, and I think Dave Navarro was like just going to play over him, and like you do with the Oscars, if you're talking too long or talking too much, they just start playing you off stage, and evidently that's what he was doing to try to drown him out for talking too much. And Perry Farrell didn't like it, so he went over and body checked him, and that was the end of the concert. So we're so glad that we saw them and bought T-shirts from the concert. We bought some merch. I usually don't like to buy $50 T-shirts, but I'm like, you don't know. This could be historic. And granted, it was definitely historic. So that was the last concert we went to. Yeah, Yeah, Tripp. And my kids were jealous they weren't able to go. So I'm like, they don't know much of who those bands are, but they were jealous they weren't a part of it. So that makes me proud.
One of the bands I've seen a bunch of times is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, which I love Tom Petty. And I've probably seen him 5 or 6 times, and they put on an amazing show. And one of the times I saw him was at Austin City Limits, and it was like Alicia and I went with my best friend Chad, who started the podcast, Homebrewed Christianity, with me. And but I feel like every time I saw them, it was with different friends who all have enjoyed Tom Petty, and he's but like I remember when he died, driving around Raleigh, just listening to Tom Petty, and like I was sad.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had like a 10-second interaction with him, but what I was mourning was, I will never see him live again. And this will not be one of the bands I get to take kids to and be like, this is on like all your dad's playlists. So that's what came into mind when you were talking about Cindy and
the living legends, the living legends principle that Cindy, and she's like, look, they may not be your favorite band, but we need to go see them because of just their legendary status, but you don't know how long they'll be. And in fact, during Theology Beer Camp, she's like, what are you doing October 17th? Stevie Wonder is coming to Greensboro. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. Let's go. Oh, that's going to be amazing. I was like, oh, I'm going to be at Theology Beer Camp. She's well, I just have to see him without you. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. So yeah, Tripp, I'm choosing you over Stevie Wonder, friend.
Wow. I thought of a joke there involving sight that I'm going to pass on.
Yeah. We can skip that. I'm sure he's used to that. He knows those things. But yeah, so we have that principle or rule of a living legend. Let's go to, I think Metallica's coming to Charlotte. And so Cindy's like, we got to sign up for that. And there are certain genres that we like more than others. But some you just go because you're like, we know the legendary status of this particular artist. We want to all kind of go together and experience together. And then there's like the deep cuts for people I've never heard of. The Hannah's like, like Remy Wolf. I'm going to go see her in Asheville, so she's pretty bummed that they had to cancel that. But yeah, when we had tickets for Aerosmith for the longest time, but they keep canceling because the poor guy keeps blowing out his voice and can't do it. So you're like, when will those opportunities happen? You want to take advantage of those opportunities, but also you don't know when the next time they can do it. But then there's the small clubs here in Chapel Hill, Cat's Cradle, legendary music hall, where small bands come and then eventually they make it. So Cindy definitely has some stories of like, I remember seeing Dinosaur Jr. here at Cat's Cradle. I remember seeing Jane's Addiction at the Rialto and in Raleigh. I remember seeing this band before they made it big. So there's also that kind of pride and kind of like you catch a band early and you can say, hey, I love saying this. Oh, I found them first. Oh, I was the first one to do that, which leads me to like one of my favorite concerts where you and I saw Greta Van Fleet. And I remember seeing Greta Van Fleet on Saturday Night Live and being like, who is this band? Who is this like Led Zeppelin throwback? People don't make this kind of music anymore, I don't think, and then discovering their albums, some of their songs, and you and I went to their concert and was just a blast. I mean, it was so much fun. I was like, yeah, we're looking at each other. It was around your birthday, went with your dad. It was like this intergenerational venue where these 20 something guys who are, akin to Led Zeppelin, that kind of 60s and 70s rock. But then later on, like a year later, I remember Hannah playing one of their songs and saying, I just found this new band. I'm loving this band. I was like, oh, that's Greta Van Fleet. Yeah, I saw them with Tripp like about a year ago. She was like, what? I cannot believe you saw that. I thought I was the first one to discover this band. I was like, no, you weren't. But that's cool. You can, take some pride and feel like you were one of the first. But yeah, we are at that concert and super rad.
Oh, that kind of music live is kind of peak rock music live, where it's essentially a rock and roll 3-piece and there are humbuckers through a Marshall stack at a very loud volume. And whatever that magic is tickles me. Which when you mention the Cat's Cradle, so like Carborough, which is essentially Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
Growing up in the Triangle, the bands that, you know, later become big that you see there. Like I saw, well, there were a bunch of ska bands that never became big, but like Edwin McCain, Hootie and the Blowfish, Ben Folds 5, Ben Queller, that kind of venue, because it doesn't have like the rock show aesthetic of like all the tech and things. If you can rock out there,
yeah,
you can usually tell when you're watching one of those bands where, you know, short of like writer's block and relational explosions, you're like, oh, there should be twice as many people in this room right now.
Or, you know, they will be at one point. There, dude, the venue in Wilmington where I grew up was the Mad Monk. We saw a bunch of bands in the Mad Monk with the small bands like Johnny Quest or the Connells, or even my friend had a band called Voodoo Squid that he got that had a bubble machine, and they were trying to be like a Cure knockoff. Yeah, props to Mike Brown. He's still a musician in New York. But we saw what was the band? Cool Like That. What was that band? Anyway, but in college, my roommate had a band, and he was playing at the Monk like some Thursday night or Tuesday night or something. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna go support Kevin Martin. And I went to the Mad Monk. There's maybe like 10 people in this place, and I'm at the bar just kind of hanging out, listening. And there's this band opening up for him, and I'm like, man, this is a super catchy song. This song where they're talking about "Hold My Hand," I was like, they're super. This band might make. This is a really good band, and it was Hootie. Hootie was opening up for Kevin Martin's band. I don't even remember the name of Kevin Martin's band, but I remember Hootie. I remember going, these songs are really, really catchy. And like months later, they're on the radio. I'm like, there you go. I saw them in Mad Monk with 10 people in a room trying to make it, but of course, someone heard it, and you're like, yep, I know this is going to one day be on the radio somewhere. So there is that kind of like the small venue versus the big stadium rock concert. You know, I think comics talk about that as well. Like the beauty of being in a small room doing comedy with a small group of people, or trying to do comedy in a stadium. You know, I think preachers can talk about, you know, preaching to a crowd of 20, 30, 40 people. And then also, you know, a huge church that can hold thousands of people. The difference of preaching and teaching to a small group to a large group, same way with music. You know, in terms of doing karaoke here with the Algae Beer Camp in our room, to then last year you on stage with a Wookiee costume, doing with an extra couple hundred people, and then this year is going to be even more. I can't wait to see how this way is leveled up. Let's loop back around and talk about Carbon Leaf is one of your favorite bands, and we saw them together in the Cat's Cradle, and it was your daughter's first concert, right? Let's share that story a little bit. So there's a connection there with Carbon Leaf. One of the guitarists is the son-in-law. Terry is one of the son-in-laws of one of my members who've been around a long time, and I didn't make that connection until his mother-in-law passed away, and I was like, I met Terry. And I was like, I'm a member of a band. And I was like, oh, cool. What band? And then he said Carbon Leaf. I'm like, I think I've heard Tripp talk about this band before. and then I kind of did some diving in. And then when I saw that they were coming to the Cat's Cradle, I was like, oh, we have to do this, and perhaps even meet Terry and let him come out and meet your family. Share that experience. That was super fun. Not only seeing them on stage, but also when you meet the band and make a connection with the band, that's super fun too.
Oh yeah. I've known Carbon Leaf since undergrad. They played at Campbell University right after they had won some music battle of the band type thing on VH1. And so like once you kind of get attached to a band and you like keep listening to them and such. And I've seen them a number of times, but Cora in lockdown when we were in Scotland, we listened to lots of Carbon Leaf together, hanging out in the hot tub in the backyard because there's nothing to do. Right. And so Alicia and I's agreement is when they, you know, as they get older, eventually Elgin's first concert was at 7. So, you know, it's getting to her birthday and she wants to go. And I'm like, oh, it's Carbon Leaf. Let's do this. But it's like club times, right? So it's a late concert for a third grader. We go, and it was tons of fun. You know, she's on my shoulders singing along and everything. And we got to meet Terry and the band and stuff before. They gave her a big birthday shout out.
They did
during the concert.
Yep.
Beautiful. And so you want the first experience of going to a live show to be good. So she wants to keep saying yes. So that, you and Terry made it quite the experience. I'm like, now the chance that a friend of mine is connected to every band you want to see is very small.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so much fun. The Elgin had a similar kind of experience with me when we first moved to Scotland. He was 12, and I had met Dustin Kinsroof from Thrice because he listened to the podcast, likes Process Thought and stuff. Mutual friend Sarah Heath, his family was visiting her church, and they got talking, and he's like, "Do you know about process theology and blah blah blah?" She's like, "Yeah, my friend Tripp talks about that." He's like, "You know Tripp?" So we got connected that way.
Cool.
Find out Elgin likes Thrice, and we're in Scotland. They're playing in Glasgow, so we take the train to go to the show. Before it, we end up hanging out in the tour bus, going to Brewdog to get dinner with Dustin, and they're backstage. It's the Refused are opening up, and we're backstage, and so it's like Elgin, me, and both the bands, and a large amount of bourbon and things like this, and I'm like worried because this is 3,000 people standing up and jumping into each other, and Elgin's 90 pounds. They're like, "Well, why don't y'all just watch the show backstage? You can come stand behind the drummer, right?"
Oh my God.
So we go back there. We're watching the Refused. We're back behind the drummer, who Elgin's been talking to their drummer like about Warhammer and other things he's into, and his son is about the age of Elgin, so he's just having a blast. I was like, giving him the, "Are we cool?" He keeps talking to you. I know you're getting ready. He's like, "This is great." Super nice guys. The lead singer for the Refused kind of, he's thoroughly entertaining, and they they're going through the show. It's quite the there's no chance you would put your small offspring in the mosh pit. Well, they're about to start the song New Noise, which, if you know the Refused, is easily their biggest hit, and it has this kind of weird drum loopy thing, and it cuts out, and then it goes hard, and the little drum loopy thing's playing, and he walks backstage and walks up to Elgin. He goes, "Watch this. I'm going to make them all beat each other." And then he walks back out. It's like, and he holds his hand up straight with the mic, and then brings it down, and the whole band comes in. They start smashing, and Elgin's like, he was controlling all of them. I was one of these things. So we're sitting backstage after after that show, before Thrice is coming on, and talking to him, and in the middle of it, the Refused, it's one moment where if it was a Christian concert, it would have been a sermon. But since they're socialist atheists, he's just critiquing capitalism and letting it, going on this rant. And Elgin, the drummer's from the Refused, "Oh, well, do you like that?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah." And Elgin has no context. He just knows Dustin and Thrice, and that Dustin likes process theology. So he didn't put together that. He goes, "That was a really good articulation of the of how the kingdom of God undermines predatory capitalism." And the drummer's just like, "Dustin has some really weird Christian friends. I wish there were more of y'all like this."
Yes.
And it was one of those moments where, as a parent, you're just like, "Yes, this is what I'm talking about."
That's a beautiful moment. Elgin being this Christian witness, not even knowing he's being this Christian witness to a pretty influential rock band. Yeah, I remember, we were all following each other around in our social medias over COVID. And I remember seeing pictures on your social media of you guys behind stage with Elgin, kind of looking upon the band, and super fun. Us being on lockdown, not having great experiences, but then, there was these house concerts and people going live, and ways Cindy, was following certain DJs, that were doing live DJs from their home, music sets, whether it's Questlove or others. And you're kind of like, cool, I want to be a part of this, and we want to be a part of this together. How do we, in this time of tragedy or need, how do we pull together and be human together? So we could do that at a distance. But then that was part of the grieving cycle of COVID, is not being able, people couldn't wait to get back together for concerts. And then eventually, when things started to relax a little bit and get a little better, these outdoor venues and outdoor concerts were the way to go. Super, super fun. Yeah, I think there's a band that I like called the Bird and the Bee, and it's Anara George and Greg Kirsten. And Greg's become like a pretty big, I guess, producer in music, and whether it's the Gorillaz or Foo Fighters or Adele, Miley Cyrus, Pink, some of those people. The Bird and the Bee came to the side room. So the Cat's Cradle has its main room, which is still pretty small, but then they have the side room, which is even a smaller venue for concerts. And the Bird and Bee were coming to play there, but only Anara came because Greg couldn't. He was too busy producing all the big time stuff. But she came and sang with a bunch of female artists on stage. It was just beautiful. Her voice is just peak, one of the most beautiful female voices I've ever heard. And love their music. But she played on stage, and eventually we're sitting up top on the balcony looking down. I'm with Ella, and Ella's a pretty good singer. She's a songwriter. She's always sung her whole life. And then Anar just kind of walks up and just starts hanging out. And I'm like, oh, Anar, hey, this is good to meet you. Big fan. She's like, thanks, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming. And I'm like, well, this is my daughter, Ella. She likes to sing as well. She's like, oh, Ella, you should. And she's having this like moment with Ella and about, well, keep singing, whether you're a rock star or whether you'd make a living or just for fun or just part of who you are and how you express yourself in the world. Don't stop singing. And Ella was like, okay, oh yeah, looking up to her. It's just those experiences. So yeah, it's the watching the person on stage, whether it's 1,000-person venue, rock stadium, or a small club. You're watching one of your heroes or kind of a rock star curating an experience for a room of people that are relating to what it means to be human or some kind of poetic expression of community or how to live in the world. But then there's also that once you meet them and you know that they're a person just like you. And there is that kind of ego-driven rock star. There's the tragedy of drugs or trying to fill a void, or, whether it's stand-up comic or sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That could be the downfall of any rock star. Ask P. Diddy. Oops, sorry. Yep, we went there. But yeah, I mean, same way with people who are curating worship, pastors who get too big or their ego gets ahead of them. There's something about leading and wanting to connect with people, but then also let it get to your head too much. Maybe that's a different conversation to another day. But all those, keep going.
Oh no, I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah. So,
if you could go back and relive any live concert you've been to,
okay,
what would you pick, and why would you pick that one?
Oh, okay. I now remember the name of the band, Diggable Planets. The 90s hip hop band played the Mad Monk, and I remember in high school or early college going to see them. And yeah, they were a hip hop band, but they also had like a drum set and a stand up bass. And so they're doing almost like hip hop unplugged, and they were playing all their hits. And it was just such a cool concert. I don't remember how crowded it was. I was a couple of my friends from high school and college. But that show in that venue, being there in the Mad Monk, I'd probably go back to a couple of Mad Monk experiences in college, whether it's Johnny Quest or Diggable Planets or a couple of those bands in the Mad Monk. And then, of course, if I could go to any era, I'd love to see Led Zeppelin at their peak. If I could go back and see Led Zeppelin live, back in the day, go see Prince again. That would be fun. I'm a big Beck fan. I love Beck. I love how he can throw out a good beat, a good bass, but then also get super moody with some strings, because his dad's a string composer. We saw him in Charlotte, and great concert. And we took the girls, and that was also a parenting experience, not only curating great music and like, look at this guy, but also around me were a lot of like 40, 50, 60-year-olds who are super drunk or high or stumbling all over the place. And I kept like pointing to my girls and like, hey, you see that person? Don't be that person. You see that person? They're not going to remember this concert tomorrow. So you make sure you remember your concert when you go to a concert. Yeah, have fun, drink responsibly, party responsibly, but also don't wake up the next day and forget where you were the day before. So there's some parenting going on about like how you experience where you're at and not going too overboard.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
For when Alicia and I got married, our mutual friend, Daniel Pugh, and my brother got us tickets for the four of us to go see Counting Crows in DC. And this is This Desert Life album, which is so their first three albums. And it was just them. And it was a college show. So you're getting, 2 hours and 15 minutes. And it wasn't like in the middle of a normal tour. So you could tell the band's there working on the next album, and they show up and they're going to do this show. So I've seen Counting Crows a bunch of times. I love Counting Crows.
Yeah.
You never know when you go see them which version of Adam, the lead singer, Adam Duritz, you're getting. One version is like, I'm doing a concert and this is my job, and I'll lapse into going for it or not. And then other times he's like all in. And this one, he was all in and not touring. Like, he has all his vocal range because he's not tired at all.
Yeah.
And they start with Mrs. Potter's Lullaby. We had perfect seats. It was the first row on the raised area next to the sound guy. So you got great sound. You can see everything. Amazing set list. And he's going, like, we're talking like hitting all the high notes in places and doing like the 14-minute version of Round Here, where in the middle of it, they excurse us into Thunder Road and come back. And it was just, it was one of the greatest concerts I've ever seen. It was like with Danny and my brother and Alicia.
So fun.
And it was about as much fun as anyone should be allowed to have in 2 hours of music. And there are songs they rarely do live. They played, which as someone that has large numbers of their concerts, bootlegs, it's like time and time again, they don't do very often. They did the acoustic version of Angel of the Silences and not the rock version. And the acoustic version from the VH1 Storytellers album is one of the best live songs. Like that live album is great. But anyway, like when I think of going, if I was going to relive one,
that's one. You go back.
Then I kind of think, like, is it as good as I remember it? Yeah, that's the other part of it.
You're in a different place.
I remember.
Yeah, if you bring with you the wisdom you've acquired over these decades back to this period, would you be in a different place? And when you do, you go see some of your heroes or meet some of your heroes or go to a concert. You hope the people that you look up to are in a healthy headspace. Whether you're Perry Farrell, Jane's Addiction, or whether your favorite artist, blew out their vocal cords the night before, going extra hard. Dave Grohl was that way. I was like, how does he keep that scream for 2 hours that long? And he finds ways and he's playing guitar and chewing gum at the same time. I read his book, and he was saying that part of the reason he chews gum when he plays guitar is to kind of help with the rhythm and kind of get his mind off of things while chewing gum and playing guitar or playing drums at the same time. And he just kept chewing gum. Because I was like, went to one of the concerts. Another special concert Sienna I went to. We were heartbroken when Taylor Hawkins passed away. For our family, it's like a death in the family, and we had front row tickets to see them on that concert, and of course they canceled. And then for Cindy's 50th birthday, their first concert back up in Connecticut. I think it was Connecticut or New Hampshire. Where did we go? It was up near Boston, up that way somewhere. We flew up there for a 50th birthday, go see their first concert back without Taylor Hawkins and back playing. It was super emotional because everyone was there supporting, and Dave Grohl got emotional on stage. And how can they do this without their beloved friend and drummer who passed away? But also that's what they'd want them to do, is Taylor want them to keep playing and rock on and play his music. And so that was super special. So you hope that the artist you see is in a good headspace, but then what you remember and experience you were in your 20s or 30s or 40s and 50s maybe is a different way of thinking about it. And that's a great question. What would you go back and see? Or is there an artist you like to go back? Well, as we wrap up and get towards the end, what is, you kind of go on tour at times. You go out and do live podcasts. You have certain things you say. You want to make sure people hear you say live. They may have heard a number of times on the pod, but what is your kind of philosophy of artists who do like their deep cuts versus their new album versus their hits? Our family went to see in Asheville Bob Dylan not too long ago, last year. He played no hits. He played everything off his new-ish album in the 2020s. I had no idea what song he was playing. It was cool to see Bob Dylan, and like halfway through, I'm falling asleep, and Hannah nudged me like, "Why are you falling asleep?" I was like, "Because he's singing me a lullaby with songs I have no idea who these songs are." I had a couple beers in me, and yeah, and he was just doing spoken word for an hour and a half, and I fell asleep. I was like, "Yeah, I can say that Bob Dylan sang me to sleep," but
personally,
he was singing me to sleep. But yeah, I was disappointed he didn't play his hits. I understand we're going to play your new stuff, but at least play a couple of the ones that people know you from. I can understand if you're tired of it, you don't want to do that again, or you're kind of done with it. But I don't know. There's a balance there, I think. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, I feel like that when you're doing something live, you should think, I want everyone that comes to want to come again. And why are they coming? And so you're tending to that. And for them to come again, you have to be into it. So what is it that keeps you into it? And that probably is a mix of things. But I mean, Bob Dylan, I don't think any of us, like, what does it mean to give Bob Dylan advice is
I know.
different. But he toured with Willie Nelson. Well, he's done it multiple times, but one of the times, and they were playing baseball parks together.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan gets up there, plays one song I knew. And like, I have a lot of Bob Dylan albums that I listen to, but they skew early, like where he did something that was still approaching singing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, Willie Nelson comes out and he only plays the hits.
Right.
And he knows what people are coming to hear. But see, he's coming out and you could tell he loves singing with everybody. That's what he wanted to do. Willie Nelson and his family are going to come out. They're going to play all the songs. You don't even have to worry. And at the end, you'll just, any of the ones he hadn't played when he knows he's running out of time, he'll just put them in a medley and do his thing.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, if they're sitting there planning their tour, you can just imagine I want this to be their favorite night of the year. That's Willie Nelson's concern. Bob Dylan's like, if I have to do this, what is going to keep me entertained?
Yeah. What's going to keep me going?
It is not All Along the Watchtower. It's not Tangled Up in Blue.
Oh God, so much.
I need all the album songs to be written in this century.
Right.
And
well, as someone
you could see those personalities, but there are certain bands, right? Like if you saw them or a songwriter and they did all B-sides, you'd be perfectly happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're fine. It's just when you're that big and you're in a stadium, like the stadium kind of dictates, like, lead us, not watch me. And like my favorite songwriter is Bill Maloney from the Vigilantes of Love. I've seen him probably 20 sometimes.
Nice.
If he's with a full band, there'll be half the set. I know what's going to come. It's going to be from one of the big 3 albums. It's going to be like good old Southern Americana rock. And then the other stuff's going to be like whatever he happens to be interested in that day. And if you saw him the next week, the set's going to be completely different. And if you see him by himself, there's no promises. It could be anything. And there's 80 some albums. And I don't care because it's him. But if it was there are thousands of people watching and there's a full band, and then he got up there and didn't play anything off Audible Sigh, or like, I'm just going to look and go, why would you do that?
Yeah. There's a sense of reading the room, but there's also like the kind of the angst of the artist and the creative mind, creative heart, the poetry you create, the music, the art. There's what keeps you going and inspired and moving forward, but also, your success can also be your prison that they want you to play the same song over and over again. So yeah, I mean, but
it's not like he only has one famous song,
right?
Bob Dylan has 40 songs that the majority of people in that room would sing along with once they figured out what he was saying, right? And it's probably like he pulled up his Spotify plays and he's like, the 100 songs with the most play, I refuse to do this to him.
Yeah. That's his edgy, like, his edgy stick it to the man thing. I was like, yeah, as a pastor of a church, medium-sized church, I'm not going to get creative and do new hymns on Christmas Eve and Easter, right? People are there for a reason for different things.
Yeah.
If I don't do Silent Night on Christmas Eve, come on. Like, no, I think there's a new hymn out there that my friend wrote for Christmas. I'm going to do all those. So yeah, don't get creative on the big things, but then there's certain times of the year that you can try out new hymns, new liturgies. But then, there's some big festival days. You probably need to stick with the hits. That's why people are there and why they come to that. So maybe
you can introduce them.
Yeah.
Like with a church, one of the things you can do is if Advent's coming up.
Yep.
And
exactly.
During Advent, I want this to land. Well, then you make sure it's already been used 4 or 5 times in the 3 months coming up to it. So that when you do a song that's slightly unanticipated, all the regulars are ready to sing it and the others kind of don't get that moment where you just went from like straight joy to the world, Silent Night, and then all of a sudden they're like, what is this? Like, at least if half the people are singing it, they're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to check this. I'm gonna have to check this one out.
Maybe I'll come in the weeks to follow too. Maybe not just Christmas. Maybe I'll show up in other days of the year as well.
Yeah, I'll come back. As a theologian, there's lots of hymns I don't want sang that will undermine everything else that was planned intentionally.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you find like this amazing song, and you're like, we need. So I always tried to pick when I was a clergy. Like these are some new songs either we don't know or new hymns that are really cool. Like, let's slowly introduce them so that if you are a regular attender, they're in your head as the songs that, if this shows up in worship here, this is one we can assume a lot of people know. And that involves like being strategic. But the reason you're doing it is, there's this whole different experience of singing a hymn or a worship song or whatever when it's completely new, and when you aren't looking at the hymnal unless you're just trying to remember the third verse or something or whatever.
Yeah,
because you're present and attending the song in a different way when it's already in you. And a lot of times communal singing, like that's part of what happens is you aren't being introduced to this song. This is already on your life's playlist. And now you're sharing it. Right. And when communal singing, either in a religious or non-religious context, is what's expected, and it's not a song that exists within enough people in the room for it to be a thing, it's hard. So that's, I think like if you're a band, and there's a reason lots of bands will early on do more cover songs than they will later. And it's because one, it's kind of cool to hear a band do another take on another song, but like there's in the 90s there's a Christian punk band, Goaty Hook, that I loved, and they do like punk cover songs of lots of it. They do them live, and they're fun, and they eventually put out an album called Songs We Didn't Write, which is just their cover songs. Or MXPX has a On the Cover album. They have 2 of them actually. And so when a band does a cover of something, you're like, oh, and you already know the song. Now you're getting to know that band because this is how they do this song. And
going back,
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, going back to Prince and Foo Fighters, I remember. Don't listen to Foo Fighters' cover of "Darling Nikki" with kids in the car, but that cover is pretty rad. And Prince, when they didn't ask Foo Fighters, I guess, didn't ask for permission to do that. They just did it. And then when Prince played the Super Bowl, he didn't ask for permission. He just sang a Foo Fighters song on stage in the rain. And I remember Dave Grohl shares the story of him just watching. All of a sudden, he's like, "Oh, that's my song. Oh well, I'm not going to get mad. This Prince on the Super Bowl singing my song to get back at me for covering their own song." But yeah, Blues Traveler even has an album called Covering Ourselves, where they cover their own songs in a different version of doing it. If you like Blues Traveler, if you can find that album, it's so good. It's just kind of an unplugged acoustic version of their older songs in different rhythms. It's so good. But then there's artists that change. Like you have like U2, you talked about U2. you went from Joshua Tree and Rattle and Hum to Octone Baby in 1991. It was a different sound. It was edgy. It was a little techno. We're like, what are they doing? They've changed. Oh my gosh. And then there's bands like, I don't want to throw Coldplay under the bus, but there's the earlier version of Coldplay I really love, but the present pop, whatever, trying to write a song so they can be at an Olympic theme song to play over and over again on NBC. I'm like, ugh, what are we doing as a band? So they're doing Saturday Night Live this week, and I'm like, okay, which Coldplay is going to show up? But yeah, there are artists that change and emerge. Yeah, there might be people who like 20-something will better than 50-something will. Who knows? We change and grow and evolve. So do our artists and bands.
When you had hair?
Yeah. They like, my mom looks at me all the time and says, man, I remember when you had hair. I remember that Will, when he had long blonde surfer hair. But yeah, well, bald Will, it's a different Will. Hey, Tripp, we have to wrap this up, but I am looking forward to experiencing music with you at Theology Beer Camp. There will be karaoke. There will also be small music artists. There's also artists who are big that have have evolved and deconstructed and in a different version of themselves than they were back in the 1990s contemporary Christian music movement. Going to be at Theology Beer Camp. I can't wait to see how it all emerges. I know music is a big part of your life and how you live your life and experience community, and as definitely a part of this conference that you are curating and be a part of. What are you most looking forward to with Theology Beer in regards to music? What is something you're
it's always karaoke, and in particular my cosplay costume for karaoke.
Oh, I can't wait.
Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil. I'm going Tom Bombadil, and Sarah Heath, who's co-hosting karaoke, is Goldberry. And
man.
So
can't wait.
Like I'm pretty excited about it, and we've been working on the karaoke set list currently. It's a really, really important element of discernment.
Yes, that's a big part of it.
And this year, there's been a couple of requests for Creed, which are high quality karaoke songs, because like those of us that were around in their original versions then they became like rock anthem, during football season. And now there's like a Creed reunion, and like all of a sudden my kids are like, I want to listen to Creed. And so when you're thinking of karaoke, there's so many possible Creed songs to pick. And so I'm really struggling to figure out which Creed song to go with, because I would naturally go like off the first album. But like when it goes to the most popular ones, I have a karaoke subscription service. Because sometimes I just do it if there are friends over and they've been drinking, and then y'all want to do some karaoke. Cora's always down to karaoke.
She's down. I know.
That could happen. At this summer at the Open Relational Theology Conference, we did some karaoke, and Cora and Rowan, who's Sarah Lane Ritchie's daughter, they did some Katy Perry with the crowd. They did some Katy Perry for karaoke time, and
fantastic.
And so I was like, I tend to only do songs from the 90s. So I'm really like expanding my horizons here.
You got to expand. You got to get out of your comfort zone there. To get ready for Theology Beer Camp and karaoke and you as Tom Bombadil. I've been reading my Tolkien reader and the Adventures of Tom Bombadil. I'm freshening up on the sacred text of Tolkien to see what portrayal or version or fanfic Tripp's going to do on stage, and we will document it, and we'll take pictures, and we will share, and we will be proud, and we'll see what news service picks it up, and see if Creed gets wind of us doing there. Who knows? They might be at Theology Beer Camp 2025. Creed might be the musicians who come to Theology Beer Camp.
There you go. Always possibility.
There's always.
I wouldn't tell them no. I'd be like, look, I don't think you're going to get paid what you normally get paid, but
paid in experiences and friendships. Yeah, it is priceless. But
if you want to go higher, and I know you want someone to take you higher, then you too could sing at Theology Beer Camp. And Like, you're probably stuck in your own prison of sold out arenas.
Yeah.
Why would you want to do that?
Yeah, let's mix it up a little
You've
bit.
created your own stadium concert prison, and you could transcend it.
I love it. Well, friends, you made it to the end, and I'm very proud of you. Tripp and I could probably talk another 3 hours about music and concerts, and we probably will at some point. But we're glad that you're able to.
It happened. Whether or not there's a microphone involved is a different thing altogether.
Right. We're glad
we're going to get an email. It's like, what was that?
And this is what we're going to say. You know what that was? That was a podcast with no rhythm, rhyme, or reason. And that's the motto of Some Joyful Noises. And thanks for being part. Hit subscribe, follow, share with a friend.
Yeah, I didn't even know this podcast existed. It just you were on my calendar.
It may not even be out in the world yet. It may not be in there. I think it's just launching. It's going to happen. And as I play this outro music and us talk over it, whether it works or not, let's see if it happens. All right, there.
Is it going to be punk music again?
No, I think it's just like a laid back outro music. If the people can hear it. But yeah, this is going to come out at some point. We're part of the, when this becomes the best music podcast out there in the world, we can say we were there at the beginning. Kind of like seeing a band at the Cat's Cradle or the Rialto from the very, very beginning. Tripp, I love you, man. And we will hang out soon at Theology Beer Camp.
Oh, yeah.
Woo, listen to that. See you, folks. We love you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Some Joyful Noises, a proud member of the Anazal Podcast Network. You can listen to other Anazal podcasts with the link that's down below in this show's description. If you have ideas for this show or would like to lead one of these episodes, then you can email us at anazalministriespodcast@gmail.com and pitch an idea to us, and we'll talk about it and see whether or not we can make it work for you to lead your own episode. We hope to hear from you soon, and that you'll help us keep it noisy. This is the launch week for our podcast, Some Joyful Noises. The two most important things for a successful podcast is one, reliability and consistency. And then number two is the best first foot forward that you can put. Since this show has no plan and no schedule, we're going to drop the ball on consistency. That means it's extra important that we have a good first foot forward, and we're asking for your help. There's a few things you can do that'll take less than 5 minutes and cost you absolutely nothing that can help our show put our first foot forward. So here's 5 things that will take you less than 5 minutes to do for no cost that would help us. Number 1, share the show. Find a friend, share the show with someone. Number 2, rate and review our show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Number 3, go to podchaser.com and rate and review the show there. Number 4, join our Facebook group, Some Joyful Noises. And then, of course, number 5 is just enjoy the show. Be sure to subscribe, and if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can go to the menu of our podcast to select automatic download. That'll help increase our downloads and tell the algorithms that this show's really important. All of these are also going to be down below in the description in case you forget any. Thank you all again so much, and we hope you enjoy the show.